Welcome to A Canadian Investing in the U.S., a podcast and YouTube channel focused on Canadians buying real estate with host Glenn Sutherland.
Welcome to a new episode of A Canadian Investing in the U.S. This week, my guest is Alex Powell. Alex, let's start off by giving everybody an intro to yourself.
Man, thanks for having me. I'm very excited, actually. I've been stoked. I'm a huge fan of your podcast. That's how I got started. So a little bit about me. So my name is Alex Powell. I'm a full-time real estate investor. I live here in the west end of Toronto and Hamilton, Ontario, or just outside of Hamilton, Ontario anyway, but most of our business is done here.
Yeah.
My background is in mechanical engineering, and I left my day job to pursue full-time real estate investing about 4 years ago. Since then, we've accumulated about 80 units. And so we've done things here locally from commercial to residential conversions to duplex, triplex, fourplex conversions. We just did a rooming house to a full apartment building conversion here in St. Catharines. So we've got lots of irons in the fire. We're doing some fun stuff. We typically like to buy super grungy properties. So that's kind of our claim to fame here. And recently we have actually, with, obviously your infinite wisdom, and consulting anyway, we have now moved into the US, and we have actually just bought our second property in Columbus, Ohio.
Nice. All right.
Yeah.
You want to, I don't know, there's so much to talk about. Like all that stuff in Hamilton even is interesting, but, or even St. Catharines, wherever else. But since we're Canadian Investing in the US podcast, maybe we'll talk about the Columbus stuff.
Yeah.
So honestly, like maybe my first question is, if you're doing so much stuff in Ontario, why bother with the US?
It's a good question, actually. Couple things. I think that for one, I think that investing in the US, especially at the price points that we're pushing at, is very attractive. You can still find a lot more cash flowing opportunities in the US than, for example, here in Ontario. You buy a duplex on the Hamilton Mountain. Let's say you're lucky enough to find something for $600,000, which you're hard pressed to. By the time you renovate it into a duplex, you cash out, refinance, or you try and get the most amount of money in. Granted, you're leaving money in the deal, which is not the end of the world or not the worst thing. However, the property likely won't cash flow, or if it does, it's barely scraping by, especially in today's interest rates. So you either have to go bigger, larger multis, you have to find a property at a deep discount, which is also very challenging, or you can kind of switch to a different market center. So I've got a lot of friends in Cleveland, in Columbus as well. So Ohio was a very attractive place for me, just from a personal standpoint. I go visit there just because I want to anyways, often enough. Not often enough, I would say, but I plan to more. So now going into Columbus, it was kind of a no-brainer. I did a lot of market research on like the areas and where I wanted to invest. And as an emerging market, I think that Columbus has so much to offer right now. And it's really exciting to see what's going on there with the new Intel plant, New Albany. Also, Google just touched down in Columbus as well. They're going to be opening one of their facilities there as well. And we'll see where the geopolitical climate takes us with like things like the automotive industry and things like that. But you consider places like St. Thomas and Windsor with the battery plants and with the Volkswagen plant opening there. That entire coast around Lake Erie there at the bottom that used to be automotive central. Cleveland, Detroit, Toledo, even up to Buffalo. I think that there's going to be a ripple effect. And if these areas can reestablish themselves as good touch points for these larger manufacturers, and, cheap housing attracts people, they've got very reasonable, ideologies towards taxation and, landlord tenant board. Don't even get me started on how much better it is out there. I mean, I'm sure you can talk a lot about that too. We haven't really experienced that side of it yet. We're just we're so new, obviously, into it. But anyway, that's what's drawn us there for sure.
That's awesome. Did you actually go to Columbus, or you did this all remotely?
Doing it all remotely.
Yeah.
Honestly, like when you told me how you did stuff, a single tear rolled down my cheek. I was like, that is the most beautiful thing ever. To put in perspective, folks, when Glenn first introduced himself, he's like, Well, I typically work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays, and I'm trying really hard to take Wednesdays off. Remember when you said that?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you were being cheeky or not. I'm sure you probably put in time on extra things. No doubt you're an entrepreneur. But I do think here's something that's super interesting. I was literally like over the moon today. As funny as today, I've got a project happening in Columbus. We've closed on it. It's about a $33,000 rental
Mhm.
that we're going to be doing. I've never seen the property physically. I've only seen it through like a walkthrough from our rep who we aligned ourselves with. I got 3 contractor quotes out there, and both of them provided me with detailed scope items. And now I have like the guy was on WhatsApp video call with me, and he's going through. And there's like 10 guys in this building just ripping through. Something here locally, I would have been like, yeah, this is probably gonna take like maybe a month and a half. The guy's like, this might take us no more than 3 weeks. It's like, what? So they're crushing it. Like I'm telling, they're putting in they're chipping up concrete to put in the new bathtub in the basement, all kinds of stuff. So it's not like paint and carpet
Quick, easy stuff.
shampooing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty in-depth renovation. So and the funny contrast is here at our office in Hamilton, we happen to be managing the property next door. And this is just because the guy who was next door became kind of buddies. He's like, do you guys mind doing the property management? You guys are managing other properties anyway. We're like, yeah, sure, no problem. So we're managing his property. They had a leak, and I've got a contractor next door. I've been over there 3 times physically to see that place and help them kind of go through and analyze how to fix it. And that's next door. And I've been there physically 3 times, and I'm doing a project 6.5 hours away, and I've never been there in person. It's really changing my mindset towards where the best utilization of my time is. Because effectively, if you can bring in people who you can empower to make decisions and to run the businesses like they should be, and they're professional enough to come up with solutions rather than me having to give them the answers every single time, you have this total change in dynamic, and you can really see where scaling is now such a powerful idea in this entire thing. So here locally, like I think the most we've ever bought in a year is maybe 12, 13 properties in a year. And it was a crazy year. In the US, I find myself uncomfortable thinking of things to do. But I've covered my base. Like I've got insurance on the properties, utilities are set up, I got my banking, it's all good. I'm just like, I should be doing more because I'm so used to always being in the nitty-gritty. But I don't know if you can maybe relate to that when you transitioned as well. But for me, it's just totally. It's crazy.
So if you were going to give advice to someone who was going to go, who'd be a Canadian, Ontario, and going to go invest in the US and be able to pull this off remotely, what kind of advice would you give these people?
It's a good question. And it's a good question because I'm not sure what the right answer is to that, other than because I feel like this is an industry you can fall very easily into analysis paralysis. You can do research. There's so much content out there, whether it be your podcast or this book or that book, or how to run projects remotely, whatever the case may be. I think that at a certain point, you have to cover some general bases. So take a class like Glenn's class, that's a good starting point where you can just get a well-rounded idea. I did that and it worked well for me. So, and then, the other thing is how much time can you commit? Now I'm kind of proving that it's a simpler process than what I initially anticipated. However, I also know real estate very well from being here locally. So if you're not comfortable with that, there's the flip side where you partner, right? So that's another thing that we do. But I would think that taking action in any direction is at least the number one step. So taking action as in going and doing some sort of training. But if you found that you're on your 5th training class and you haven't done anything, not training class, but training session of however many lessons you've been training for the last 2 years and you haven't pulled the trigger or done anything, I think that might be something that you want to reel back and say, okay, what's stopping me from taking action? What am I afraid of? And maybe I can partner with somebody who I can do my first 1 or 2 deals with, and then they can kind of hold hands as I see the process roll out. That would kind of be my advice, it depends on the personality, it depends on the person, depends how comfortable you are. But I will say that the US is a different beast, eh?
Oh yeah.
It's like a wild west out there. I get so excited about some of the stuff that's available, like subject twos and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
Mind you, we
They
just
are
did our first
available.
subject.
People think they're like
We
some sort
actually,
of white unicorn. They're pink
I
unicorn.
know,
They're
I
out.
know. It's crazy. It's like, and just the conversation around it too. It's so like they've been through it all. Nothing surprises them. You come up with it. Like I remember when wholesaling really became popular here, or like the past 4 or 5 years. I don't know.
Yeah.
People were like, "This is illegal." It's like, no, it's not. It's just this different element that maybe hasn't happened in a while or whatever. And you also see that the market, fluctuates. And in different parts of the market, different strategies are more useful. Like subject twos, for example, those people that bought in 2020, 2021, they bought for 250 and locked in an interest at 2.8%.
Yeah.
And now, fast forward to 2023, that 250 property is only worth 200 because the market's gone down. But they've locked in at 2.8%. I'll buy that at the full pop and make sure that they walk away without any sort of debt. They don't have to pay out of pocket. And I just ride it out.
Yeah.
It's just stuff like that. It's just mind blowing. It's so cool. Yeah.
So you are super experienced. You're talking about all the units you had off the start, right? And going into this, and then you took the course, like you took my course that is in the advertisement here. Hello, everybody. Thanks for listening to the podcast. I just wanted to let you know that I've created a new coaching program. I believe the new coaching program has way more value than any of the programs that have even existed in the past. What we've done is pre-recorded all the lessons so that you can work through it at your own pace, which is pretty cool. And then we're going to meet up on a regular basis to answer the questions, do deal analysis, and actually spend our time together working on things instead of spending our time learning things. I think this will make a seamless transition to buying in the United States and will help you solve a lot of your problems. If this is of interest to you, go to glensutherland.com/coaching. I hope to help you guys invest in the United States, and I hope we provide as much value as possible. Back to the podcast. But if I don't want to tote my course too much, but I have to say something. But do you think someone who wasn't as experienced as you could buy in the US? Or do you think you have to be experienced to take that course and actually succeed?
Yeah, I think so, for sure.
Yeah.
I don't think you need to be an experienced person to have bought there. I
Yeah.
think a lot of the stuff it wasn't new concept to me, like how to run comps. For
No.
me, I was interested in like what systems do you use to run comps, or how were you, like for example in the US, like square footage makes a huge difference. Here in Canada, it's not nearly as like prominent, like obviously massive discrepancy in square footage make a difference, but it's like bedrooms, bathrooms, it's very unique. Like the year that a property was built, I don't think I know what year any of my properties here were built, ever. They just are there. So these smaller nuances that are different. For example, we use lawyers here in Canada. They use title companies. It's like and navigating just some of these concepts is a little bit different. But fundamentally, if when you're buying a property, you have to set up heat, hydro, gas, property taxes. You got to get your insurance, and then the renovation experience is another plus. However, I will say renovations would probably be, and that has nothing to do with, let's say, your course. That just has to do with this whole idea. But something that I think that is wise to have somewhat knowledge in. I think that likely if you don't, if you come across as maybe a little bit naive, someone could try to take advantage of you. But I think if you set yourself up with the right power team out there, and that might take a visit or two. So before I took your course, I went to Columbus and I had called a bunch of wholesalers, a bunch of property managers, a bunch of realtors, and I just met with a few of them. And I thought it was very valuable too to get a lay of the land, to know don't invest in that area, focus down underneath this highway because that's a good pocket, stuff like that. But the renovation side, sorry, going back to it, is where I think that if you get yourself around the right team of people, they'll put you in touch with contractors who will take good care of you too.
Yeah. And as these were your first two properties in the US, I know you're experienced in Canada. Do you have any issues? Did like anything surprise you? is there like any problems with closing, any problems with contractors getting keys?
Knock on wood, no problems yet. But I will say this, in Canada here, your closing date is like,
Oh,
imagine it's like a sniper rifle with a scope, and that date is right dead in the center. If you deviate from that closing date, the bells are ringing in the streets, and people are like, we're gonna cancel this deal and sue you and keep your deposit and all that stuff. In the US, the closing date is like a mild suggestion.
yeah.
Like nobody cares. They're like, yeah, we're gonna extend it another week. I'm like, what? Like this, I don't care. Fine. It actually, funny enough, I ended up negotiating another $500 off because I already had private money lined up wired to my US bank account, and I was starting to pay interest on it. I was like, guys, we pushed it now. This is the second week we're pushing it. Hook a brother up, and they did.
So you got 2 pushes. Is that what happened? You had two 1 week pushes?
Yeah, 2 1 week pushes.
Yeah.
It wasn't too bad, but still, they had to clear their title. So I get it. I'd rather they clear title than give me a property that doesn't have clear title, right? So.
Oh yeah, and like even when you're buying, when you're selling, the same thing happens, and you have carrying costs. You gotta, there's an expense to these delays, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
For sure.
and it never hurts to ask. With anything, people can always say no, but never if you don't ask, you're kind of leaving stuff on the table.
Yeah. Do you find the same thing? Like closing date isn't as rigorous in the US?
Oh, completely. We're supposed to be closing tomorrow on a property in Birmingham. It got pushed to the 30th, another week, right? That's just how it goes.
I can't imagine if like I was a buyer and I had my truck packed because I have a moving company coming and I gotta move.
I've said that before. I'm like, I don't understand how people actually move in the United States, because how do you line that up? Like, even if you're going from being a renter to a homeowner, like, do you have to keep a crossover period where you own both and you're renting? Because how do you pull this off? Because they don't have, their timelines aren't solid.
Yeah. But it's good on them. Nobody stresses about it. They're like, yeah, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the part that sucks though is if it gets delayed like a month, and like if you're doing like a renovation, it could push the season that you're selling this place in, right?
For sure.
Say you're doing a 4-month renovation, like you may not want to be selling this in the winter, right? You wanted to get that fall market or whatever, right? Or you want to get the summer market over the fall market.
Yeah.
Certain markets are, more powerful than other ones. So, Alex, you got 2 now. What's the future? What are you looking to do? What do you envision for this?
Well, right now, so a bit. You asked me this question at the beginning. It's like, why go into the US? Another reason that I failed to mention, and this is very prominent here, we work a lot with joint venture partners. We work with private money lenders, so people who are just looking to make an interest on their money. And I would have a lot of people reach out to me and say, hey, listen, Alex, I've got like 60K. I'd love to invest with you. What can we do? And here in Canada, it's like, I can buy me like a couple kitchens, maybe. It's like I can't do much because property values are just so exorbitant. And so here we have a pretty high minimum kind of buy-in, I guess you could say, where in order to work with us, you at least have to have some sort of established funding in an amount of like 250,000. Plus, you have to be able to qualify on the back end. In the US, because we're dealing with a different beast anyway, and I mean, you've seen it. There's properties in Cleveland, Ohio, going for $60,000, and they will cash flow a couple $100 a month. So our next big thing, and as we'll still buy here locally as well. Like I still love kind of being involved in projects a little bit more, and but I think as we start to systematize things more, like more rigorously, I guess is the right word to use, like more systematic approach to scaling, of course. I think that it's going to be more in line with helping working with other people to invest in the US at these more reasonable price points. And I think that another play too, and another thing that comes to mind is cash flow. Here locally in Ontario, I mean, from an equity standpoint, Kaylee and I are sitting pretty, and I'm not saying that to brag, but we don't have high debt in a lot of our properties. We haven't choked too many of our properties up too high. We have maybe a couple of units that aren't performing as they should because of the higher interest. But all in all, it's good. But I will say that cash flow is not nearly as good here locally as it could be for the prices that you're paying. Your rent to purchase ratio is like substantially more than in the US. So the cash flow play, I think, is the next play where it's like, can you get to like what level can you get to end up living a lifestyle that's kind of on autopilot, right? And so I don't see myself doing like flipping. To me, even here locally, when we flip properties, it's a means to an end. We use flip proceeds to buy rental income properties, so you can just get passive income. I don't foresee a massive flipping conglomerate. I don't want to do, like, I aim to do a lot of flips, but all that money is to be funneled into buy and hold rentals that are just going to coast and do their thing. Rented out by property managers, they do their own thing, and I look at my asset sheet once a quarter and I say, how are we doing? That's my plan.
Nope, I totally agree. Totally agree. So like, especially when you're buying like those $60,000 Cleveland properties, if you buy one, you're going to have an issue because you can't refinance that. It's below like lenders minimums, right? So you got to be prepared to buy a bunch if you're going to do a refinance or put a loan on it, right? To bundle them together. But for some of my partners that we do flips, right? We've done a flip or two, and then because you're like, Glenn, you have those in your portfolio. What are you talking about? And that's how they come about. You do the flip, you make your 60 grand profit, then you can go sink it into something like that where it's kind of stuck, but it's sitting now, especially if it's in cash, it's a $60,000 place, rents for $1,000 a month. You're like, boom, we're now making $1,000 a month minus some property management, some taxes, insurance. But now we have a much bigger cash flow than even holding the $200,000 property and renting that. By the lower ones are going to have the high cash flow. The high ones are going to be amazing for flips. You do some alternating, you do some rotating, and you can really like make it so you can leave your job like we both have,
totally,
right?
Totally.
Exactly.
Let me ask you, what do you think about Cleveland? Because I look at Cleveland, I have to like be careful of Cleveland, and for my own good, I see property values there, and it's like it's a 3,000 square foot mansion that's going for $18,000. But not maybe not a mansion, but it's like a massive property. I'm talking huge. You see something like that come across your feed. Now you know that property is going to take $100,000 to renovate, and then when it's finished, it's only worth 80 grand. And it's just this like super weird, messed up idea because seeing a property for $18,000 just gets you riled up, and it's just crazy. Like, this is the best opportunity ever. And then you kind of have to peel back the onion a little bit. You're like, wait a second, this is, I've got to account for like my appliances going missing maybe once every 2 weeks. People are breaking in and taking them.
I think you like nailed it right on the head right there. The nail on the head. Like, you got to run the numbers. It's like purchase, the reno, the ARV. Does it make sense to buy it? If you're going to be upside down, obviously doesn't. Even if you're going to break even, then why not just buy one that's already renovated and not go through all that time with carrying cost and whatever else? Like, you got it. There has to be a reason to renovate it. One thing that's I've done a couple of these, but I don't specialize in them, is opportunity zones. Like, there are spots where that is happening. Like, there's mansions, they don't make sense for any investors to ever buy them, and the government will step in. And the first one we bought, they offered us, we applied to have them pay for the renovation, and the government countered and offered us, I think it was 12 years with no property taxes.
Our second one we just bought is in an opportunity zone.
Yeah, so you fill out an application and you see what you can get, right? Another one we're getting them to pay for part of. No, there's no capital gains. The other one, they said, well, you will have no capital gains on the second one because of where it's located. So they'll come back with an offer of something in order to incentivize you to buy in these places. To make
it's like, it's legit, just like playing Monopoly, and you land on the question mark and you got to pull the card. Yeah.
That's an awesome way to think of
it. That's so funny. I actually, like, I saw it as part of the package. The second one we got, I'm actually going to keep it as a buy and hold.
Yep.
This property was completely mislisted. They listed it as a two bed, 1.5 bath First of all, it has 2.5 bathrooms. They completely missed a whole bathroom. Second of all, it has a sunroom that looks, feels, acts like a bedroom on the main floor. So it's actually 3 beds upstairs, and it has this bedroom in the basement area with 2 beautiful sized windows, and it's already finished, just needs some floors. It could be a 4-bed. So we're gonna buy it as a 2-bed, 1.5 bath, and we're going to convert it and lease it out as a 4-bed, 2.5 bath. Kitchen,
That's a huge
everything's in great
advantage.
shape.
Like,
Crazy.
because rent is based off of bedrooms, right?
Yeah.
If you're building, and that's the thing that people always get messed up, because in Ontario, you renovate a house to renovate a house. And between a rental and a flip, it's not that much different, right? But in the US, like it is different, right? If you over renovate to a neighborhood, you put granite and quartz or whatever into the property, you won't get your money back, right? If you're in the wrong neighborhood, because it doesn't dictate it, and they won't pay any extra for it, right? So you just waste your money. You get the exact same price if you put like a laminate countertop in, right? The other side of the coin is where is it? Oh, the bedrooms, right? So sometimes if hey, I'm going to make this a rental property. Like, so I have a property in Fairborn, Ohio, and we could have went either way with it, but we renovated the attic to be a loft. As to go on the MLS, it doesn't count. It's not in that county, it doesn't count that as a bedroom, right? But for a rental property, it counts it as a bedroom. If it's a 4-bedroom instead of a 3-bedroom, we can get an extra $200 a month in that area, right? So it's, that renovation makes sense if you're going to keep it as a rental. If you're going to flip it, it doesn't make sense, right? Or it could have value to some people. It's like putting a pool in. It could have value, but it may not have value to their other people.
Yeah.
So especially if you're in Ohio, right? It's gonna pool may not have as much value as it does in Florida, right? Because like honestly, if I'm going to go rent an Airbnb in Florida, it has to have a pool. I'm not dealing with the heat, especially in the summer, right? But anyway, no, there's so many differences. There's so many differences in just the little things, the intricacies on how they evaluate, what makes sense to do, right? And that's even for me, a lot of times, the contractor's like, do you want a rent-ready rental or a flip-ready rental? And I used to do I want something in the middle, even as a rental. Rent ready is not what rent ready is in Ontario. Like it's like it's safe and painted. Like I need a little.
I've seen those pictures where they paint the light switches the same color as the wall and stuff.
Yeah, no, I need a little bit more than that, right? So like we were both just talking about contractors, like getting a scope of work, like what are they actually doing is kind of important. Because you could be surprised that some of the stuff isn't at the standard where you think it should be, because you're used to what a rental property is in Ontario, and it isn't the same, right? The criteria, what people live in, is not the same. Trying to say that as politically as correct as possible, but we expect so much in Ontario. Honestly, that's even as tenants, they expect so much.
So we know a guy. We now manage his property. We didn't before, but he had a piece of his laminate flooring that's separated. And here, the not laminate, the vinyl click flooring, sorry. It cracked eventually. This tenant took him to the LTV for emotional distress because of this flooring. And she won.
What?
$5,000. Like it was I lit a candle at home and I was just like, oh my Lord. Like you are absolutely right, is that there's a different expectation here. I find it's just, that's another reason. I mean, the list just kind of goes on, but
you did touch on the landlord tenant board, but in the US, you want to raise your rent, it's easier. You want to do an eviction, it's shorter, right? And cheaper. If you want to hire a paralegal, that is, right? Like a lot of times I'm paying like $350. I think the most I've ever paid is like $600, depending on the state, right? But it's pretty darn affordable to hire someone to do this for you, do the labor, the minimum, what do you call that? Minimum wage. It's much lower, right? State specific, but it's much lower. than it is in Canada, right? You want someone to clean a house out, it's cheaper, right? A lot of times trades are still going to be expensive, right? But you just general labor is going to come down in value, right? Or
And
price.
I find that the market actually dictates a lot of what it is. Like there's an opportunity basis in the US, and that's part of the reason I love it. It's like everybody's there to work to make a buck, and you can work together, and there's negotiating all the time, and you're trying to figure out the best way to do it. But there's an opportunity there to make money, and because of that, like rents, for example, you can go to your tenant and say, listen, I'm going to jack up rents $500. You may think that's a great thing because comparatively we have rent control here in Ontario, but the renter can then say, okay, I'm leaving because it doesn't justify fair market value rent. Here in Ontario, you can't do that, but then again, tenants also can't go and find another place because there's a scarcity. It's like there's like that.
If there's availability for other rents, the market will dictate what the rent is.
Exactly.
It'll correct itself. People won't pay for it. You make a raise even $150 on a place that doesn't dictate it, they'll just go somewhere else.
That's exactly it. And that's the way I think it should be. Yeah. We have an apartment in New Brunswick, actually. It's the same kind of concept there. You can't ask for more rent because the market won't dictate it. And hence their landlord-tenant rules are a lot more sane. I'm a little jaded, if you can't tell, but luckily enough, our units here, like we typically buy really shit properties and then we fix them up and then refinance them and pull out. But our units usually have like quartz countertops, stainless appliances here locally, right?
Yep.
But that's another thing that I'm kind of having to unwind and unlearn because, as you said, it's like some areas don't warrant it. Some areas you need to just account for the fact that you're just buying something to make it safe, make it comfortable, but it doesn't have, like, if it's got popcorn ceiling you don't have to change it, just leave it. Or just give the carpet a shampoo, you don't have to replace all the floors. So
or go into a market like Indianapolis and it's customary for the tenants to bring their own appliances. You're like, think about it. You think about all this stuff and what your costs are as a landlord that, it's that thing breaking. It's replacing that. It's getting dirty and having to clean it between tenants. That's just not even your cost.
Yeah. Wow. I see it all the time in like these listings where the appliances aren't there. I'm like, what a weird thing.
Oh, I know.
Actually, for our purchase, they and I knew it too going in, but the contractor called me. He's like, sir, your fridge, where'd your fridge go? I was like, no, it was part of the deal. They took the fridge with them. It's just such a weird thing to me. It's like, just leave your appliances, it's fine. But here, like everyone just kind of trades the next place they go, right? It's just you buy new appliances, buy the house with the appliances that come with it. So
just a little bit different.
Yeah.
Alex, I think we're gonna have to have you come back in maybe the fall. But people want to get hold of you. You're doing sounds like you wanted to do some working with some people and coming up. People want to get a hold of you and do some Columbus or possibly some Cleveland coming up. We'll see. But how do they get a hold of you?
Easiest way is actually just go through our website, www.palpropertysolutions.com. And then my email is also apal@palpropertysolutions.com. So that's one way. And then also follow us on Instagram. I think it's palproperties_solution or pal_property_solutions, one or the other. But I'm sure, through the community, we'll have mutual friends or whatever, but that's probably the easiest way.
Awesome. This was an awesome one. I love these ones. Thanks for coming on the show. I think there's
I'm thankful. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you for your teachings, and I'm very grateful for the connection and for the invite to be on your show. Big fan.
You're welcome. All right. Well, thanks for coming on the show.
That was a nice video. Bye.